India is a melting point of different ethnicities and different so-called tribes which migrated at different points of time. But you can't make a socio-construct out of it right now, because there is a lot of intermingling that has happened. Right? So, I mean, you can say that, okay, an average Kashmiri is different from an average Tamilian. But that's just on a few phenotypes, like appearance or skin tone. But if you look at the genetic, the holistic level,
it's all the same.
It's similar. So there are no. So Tamil Nadu itself, for example, population within Tamil Nadu is highly diverse. Differences within a race is almost equal to the differences between races. So which means variation, right? So when we say that a race is different, race A is different from race B, that means there has to be within race A, the variation should be less compared to A and B. But if you look at a holistic genomic level, at the level of the entire genome, this is what, there is more variation among, for example, the Africans. Okay?
Amongst each other.
On an average. So these are all statistical averages, right?
Right.
Of course, two brothers from the same family would have more genetic similarities. I'm talking about from a holistic perspective.
Right.
From the entire genomic level.
Vast amount of all species
right.
are non-vegetarian, or they eat meat. Welcome to the other Tharoor podcast. Today we have an acclaimed, award-winning scientist and scholar with us, whose research on spider sociology won him one of the most prestigious science awards in the world, the Humboldt Fellowship. He is also a keen commentator on race, sociology, and gender through the prism of science. We welcome Dr. Bharat Parthasarathy to our podcast.
Thank you, Madhav, for having me here.
Yeah. This is your first time in Bangalore, or have you been to Bangalore before?
I did my graduation here in Bangalore. So I had my formative years in Bangalore. And then I did my bachelor's in St. Joseph's College. It was a college back then. Now it's a university.
Right.
And then I've been on and off in Bangalore. And then I went for my master's, and then I came back to Bangalore for some time. Then I went out for a PhD, and then so I've been on and off in Bangalore.
What's been your journey so far in science? Like you are been in this field for nearly 20 years now, almost 15 to 20?
Not 20, since 2012, I would say.
Okay.
That's when I started my PhD.
Right.
So nearly 13, 14 years.
Right.
So I'm an evolutionary biologist.
Okay.
And I'm interested in social evolution. So why animals live together, why they cooperate, why they live in societies. Okay. And some animals even take the extreme step of foregoing reproduction to live in a colony, to live together.
Okay.
So this is what I try to understand by using social organisms as a model system. Specifically, I also have done a lot of work on social spiders.
Okay.
Trying to see how they cooperate, why they cooperate, and when they should defect.
Right.
So these are the answers that I'm kind of broadly addressing through my research.
Okay.
And this will also help us to understand our own human evolution, like how human societies would be in the future. Okay. Especially in this age of artificial intelligence and things.
So you're extrapolating your research to...
Yes, but I would be a little careful. I would not extrapolate too much. But the aim is to understand how human societies are going to evolve, and where we came from, and what makes, because humans are social. Okay. So what makes us to cooperate, and so I think this has got deep down implications in geopolitics and also in understanding our own.
Is it the same research which you got the award for?
Not exactly. So usually one changes a little bit after the PhD. So I got the Humboldt Fellowship for studying sex ratios. So what I mean by sex ratios is, most animals have an approximately equal male to female ratios.
Okay.
But these spiders, social spiders around the world, although they have independent evolutionary origins, which means that they evolved independently.
Right.
And all of these social spiders, they show female bias sex ratios. So which means they go to an extent, they go to such an extent where they are they have more females, they inbreed. So female bias sex ratios is a consequence of inbreeding.
Okay.
And so they inbreed to live together. So that's the extreme step that they have taken to live together. Whereas most social animals, they don't inbreed, they do have outbreeding.
Right.
So that was what I was examining during my Humboldt fellowship.
Okay.
I was trying to look at sex ratios, how it varies,
Right.
and I also did some work on task participation.
Okay.
So who participates in which task in the colony and things like that.
So in the research, you often talk about that at least most animal species are hierarchical.
Yes.
They are unequal in many senses. There's dominance.
Right.
There's a dominant even in the group.
Right.
Like in wolves or whatever, there's a dominant
Right.
alpha.
Right.
And then you have recessive.
Right.
You have the followers.
Right.
The slaves, the servants, whatever you may call it.
Right.
So in your research, you have kind of said that there's only there in your particular the species which you are researching, they are more egalitarian and they don't have this kind of pronounced differences, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah.
So can you?
Yes. So you look at any social animal, except these spiders, which I'll come to later. There is dominance hierarchies. There is some kind of a hierarchy, either dominance hierarchy or morphological castes, as you see in ants and bees, or as you earlier said, a pack of wolves have these alpha, beta, those kind of hierarchies. And human society also has hierarchies. In human society is much more complicated, right? So there's age-based hierarchy, and there are whatnot and whatnot. So it's kind of multidimensional, human society. So generally speaking, these hierarchies are important for animals or for any society to sustain.
Right.
Because number one, if there are no hierarchies, individuals would not know whom to compete with. So it can be dangerous, right? For example, you don't want an amateur to fight with a professional, because that's bad for the amateur. The amateur is going to lose.
Okay.
So hierarchies help in a way individuals to know where they should compete, with whom they should compete, and with whom they should cooperate.
Okay.
Right? That's one thing. Now, the other thing is, societies do not stably exist if there are no hierarchies. For example, to just put it in layman's term, imagine that 4-5 of us come together. We are all equals. We come together and we decide to build a house.
Right.
Now, who's going to do the tough job? Who's going to do the easy job? So there's going to be that kind of this conflict, right? That some people among the 5, one is going to be lazier, and that person would probably do.
So you're saying that hierarchy is necessary for some kind of selection?
It's necessary for the tasks to happen, right? Otherwise, there's going to be conflict on who's going to do the tough job, who's going to do these. Now, if you have a hierarchy, you suddenly have a manager who kind of manages, who says, okay, this person does this work.
Right.
So that's where you have these kind of dominance, or all these kind of hierarchies kind of telling the social system what to do.
So it's completely natural.
It is natural. You see it in all animals,
okay,
except the social spiders that I work on.
Yeah.
And they seem to be egalitarian. When I say seem,
when you mean egalitarian, he means
yes. So what I mean by egalitarian is, in layman's term, it's there are no hierarchies. Everybody is equal.
Right.
Like what the communists want.
Okay.
Right. An ideal world where everybody is equal and there are no dominance. There's no one superior, one inferior.
Right.
Right. So here these spiders, they seem to have an egalitarian, because we can't talk to spiders, so we don't really understand what is going on in their mind. But what appears to us is they have a egalitarian lifestyle, which means when you look at hunting, when spiders hunt, they seem to everybody seems to participate. So one of my earlier work showed that the one who is hungry is the one who hunts. Now this seems very intuitive, right? Because the one who's hungry is the one who's going to hunt.
Okay.
But that's not always true, because there are some specialists at hunting, which is kind of which does a better job in hunting, so that would participate in hunting more often.
Okay.
And driven by state and all that, so that I'll not go into the details.
Right.
And if you look at this webs, so these spiders, they make webs, they make nests, they make different types of silk, and everybody seems to participate equally in building silk. Okay. Now the question here is, there should be freeloaders, right? There's going to be some, so I'm talking about spiders which live in hundreds, groups of hundreds, right? Now, there are going to be some individuals which is going to freeload on the efforts of the hard workers, so to speak. Now, how does this society, spider society, have a way to keep freeloaders at a minimum.
Okay.
So that is the reason why hierarchies, evolutionary models predict that societies with hierarchies are the ones which are stable.
Stable. Yeah.
But the spiders society seems to be a exception, and that's what makes me interested to research more into this into this topic.
Okay. So you're also a commentator on race and genetics as well, moving a bit away from your research.
Right.
So you have said on many occasions that the genetic variations between two races
Right.
is much lesser than, say, the genetic variations between
the race.
two individuals in a race,
Right.
like maybe family cousins or distant relatives,
Right.
or even in terms of the same village,
Right.
people of the same village.
Right.
So what is your can you explain that?
Sure. So that's an interesting topic, and as you said, I'm moving away from my research. So obviously, I'm not a specialist in this.
Okay.
But based on my understanding, I can probably give some insights to the viewers. So the reason why racial theory does not hold true today is because differences within a race is almost equal to the differences between races. So which means variation, right? So when we say that a race is different, race A is different from race B, that means there has to be within race A, the variation should be less compared to A and B. So what I mean is, in layman's term, let's say there are 5 individuals belonging to race A, and there are another 5 individuals belonging to race B. Now, the variation between these 5 individuals in race A is supposed to be, or you would expect it to be lesser compared to the 5 individuals in A with B.
Okay.
Right? Now, in some obvious phenotypes like skin color, eye color, hair color, facial features, there are differences. I mean, we can immediately look at somebody and say which race they belong to. Okay. But if you look at a holistic genomic level, at the level of the entire genome, this is what, there is more variation among, for example, the Africans. Okay.
Amongst each other.
On an average. So these are all statistical averages, right?
Right.
Of course, 2 brothers from the same family would have more genetic similarities. Yeah. But I'm talking about a population level average.
Okay.
So there are more similarities. I mean, there are more variation among the African race than there is variation between the African and the Caucasian, for example.
Wow.
Right? I'm talking about from a holistic perspective.
Right.
From the entire genomic level.
Okay.
Of course, there are some, diseases which are linked with races, right? So, for example, you have these irritable bowel syndrome, which is more associated with the Jewish population, or even with the Westerners, the whites, right? And now we know that Indians, I don't know if we can really classify Indians as one homogeneous racial group, but the South Asians, so to speak, are much more prone to heart attack and diabetes. Okay. Right? So there are some diseases which are linked with races. Okay. But on the whole, the variation between a race is almost similar to variation within a race. Oh. Okay. So that's the reason why racial theory, not many anthropologists nowadays are interested in taking the racial, the theory forward. Okay. And besides that, I'm just purely talking from a scientific point of view. So I'm not talking about the biases that are induced with race. So that's a different thing. Yeah.
This is only through the prisms of science.
It is only through the science.
Okay. Yeah. So the racial differences between, say, a black person, African person, and an Indian is much lesser than the racial differences between Africans themselves and Indians themselves.
I am not saying not necessarily lesser. I am saying there is no statistical significance. It's similar. That is what I mean. Okay. Right? Okay. So what I mean is the racial difference between 2 Africans is not lesser statistically than between an African and an Indian, for example.
Okay. Then why do physical characteristics change?
Sure. So that is the thing, right? So there are things which is which as I said earlier, you can look at somebody and then say from which race they belong to, because there is difference in skin color,
So is it environmental? Is it?
It could be environmentally driven. So there are some. So I was just reading some articles which said that the native Europeans 10,000 years ago had brown skin and blue eyes.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So somewhere the white skin is probably an adaptation to the environment.
Okay.
And of course that was selected for. So that could be the reason why there are these obvious differences. But at the level of the genes, we don't see any significant difference between different races.
Okay. So what about India? Like, there are so many there are so many now theories of different races within India.
Yeah.
You're saying that by and large all Indians have the same genes or genetical?
No, there again. So we are not bacteria, no? So we don't
no, not like that. I'm saying the genetic variation is very less. That's what I'm talking.
No, see, that's the beauty of genetics. Genetic variation is there. Of course, India is a melting point of different ethnicities and different so-called tribes which migrated at different points of time. But you can't make a socio-construct out of it right now, because there is a lot of intermingling that has happened.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, you can say that, okay, an average Kashmiri is different from an average Tamilian. Right?
Okay.
But you can't make models which is going to make accurate predictions. Like, for example, like how I said, by looking at somebody, you might say that, okay, this person is likely to be a South Indian or North Indian. You can, but that's just on a few phenotypes, like appearance or skin tone.
Okay.
But if you look at the genetic, the holistic level,
it's all the same.
It's similar. So there are no. So Tamil Nadu itself, for example, population within Tamil Nadu is highly diverse. So there is a lot of variation within Tamil Nadu itself.
Okay.
Which is very similar to the variation between an average Tamilian and average Kashmiri. Okay. If you look at the entire.
Okay. So you're saying the local variations can be.
Yes.
Almost.
Yes. So that is the reason why we can't really have a socio-construct out of it. Of course, there are clusterings. There are some communities because of several centuries of endogamy. So they've been marrying within their caste and all that. So there are, but I'm talking from a pan-India perspective. You can't really say that a Gujarati gene is something which is very different from a Bengali gene, for example. So there because of a lot of intermixing.
So these are all just the constructs which have.
These are just socio-constructs. Yes.
Okay.
From a biological level, I don't think there is any.
So definitely the whole Aryan Dravidian discourse. There is no genetic proof to it.
There is no genetic proof. There is no scientific evidence. There should have been some migration. You can call it Aryan migration or whatever migration. Because India was it's a tropical country, good weather, and in 300, 400, 500 years ago, India was doing well economically. So a lot of people came into India at different points of time. But what exactly you mean by this so-called this thing of a native people who were, this so-called Dravidian and Aryan? I don't think there is any proof for it. But research is going on, so we have to see what. I'll be carefully watching what the outcome is.
But but on a little bit human level, and we. Going back to the animal world, there are different kinds of species of animals. Like even in an elephant, there's African elephant,
right?
There's Asian elephant,
right?
There's even the monkeys vary, but all these are different species,
right?
But on a racial level amongst people,
right?
Why are we not classified as?
That's a very good question. So the word species comes when this human beings have this desire to classify things, to compartmentalize things, right? If you go and see, the nature is a continuum, but we want to kind of classify. And so 400, 500 years ago, people started classifying animals. It's called taxonomy, right? Animals and plants and all living things. So those days, what a species is something which is obviously different, like a cat and a monkey. But later on, as we kind of started looking at a lot of these organisms which resemble which look very similar, but they classified into different species, because what is a biological species concept is if two organisms are not able to reproduce, or even if they reproduce, the offspring is sterile. For example, a mule, right? A mule is a hybrid between a donkey and a horse.
Yeah.
Right? So donkey and horses are two different species.
Yeah.
Why? Because they can breed, they can give rise to a mule, but the mule is sterile.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So biological species concept.
So the mules can't reproduce.
Mules cannot reproduce. They are sterile.
They are not a species on their own. They are not a
mule is a hybrid.
hybrid. Okay.
It's a hybrid.
Okay.
But they cannot. So that particular mule cannot sustain in its population.
Okay.
If there are no horses and donkeys, because mule is not able to reproduce.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Okay.
So that is what a species means. Species means that two organisms, if they belong to different species, that means they cannot reproduce.
Okay.
There is reproductive isolation, as we call it.
Okay.
Now, if you see in humans, every race can reproduce with every race.
Okay.
Right? So that's the reason why you can't.
Oh, okay.
So you can't say that a race is a different species. So that's why you can't call a white from an African from a South Asian different species, because
we are all just one, basically. That's what he's
biologically, yes.
Biologically, yes.
There are cultural differences, definitely, but biologically, yeah.
What about Homo sapiens? Homo sapiens, are there different species as compared to the?
No, that's what I'm saying. So Homo sapiens, as we know today, is one species, right? So there are no subspecies or. Probably Neanderthals 50,000, 60,000 years ago probably might have been a subspecies. I'm not, could have, and there was some kind of a hybridization that was happening. Hybridization means like intermixing.
Okay.
Happening between the Homo sapiens and the Neanderthals.
Okay.
Right.
So basically, Homo sapiens are the only species around of humans, and all the
right
races,
now, yes,
all the races are all part of that.
Are all part of that.
And what about the other species of humans? They've all died out, is it?
So there were some species earlier, like Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and all that, and they all died out because probably there was also changing environmental conditions.
Right.
And I heard this very interesting thing. I don't exactly know whether it is erectus or habilis. So but one of the species.
For some context, Homo erectus, Homo habilis are all different. All were different species of humans who have died out many millions of years ago.
No, many hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Hundreds of thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And now Homo sapiens are the only.
Now Homo sapiens are the only existing species. So for example, coming back to what I was trying to say. So I don't exactly know which species I'm talking about, but I think it was habilis. So those individuals, they didn't have this freedom of rotation of hand. Okay. So they were just because the radius and ulna is thin in Homo sapiens, right? Which allows you to rotate your wrist at the cost that when you fall down, this is probably the first bone that is going to get fractured.
Oh, okay.
Right, because the radius and ulna is much thinner.
Right.
Right, and you need this thinness to rotate your fist. True. Right, at the cost of a fracture when you fall down.
Okay.
Now, one of these species, habilis or they had a very thick radius and ulna, and they were not able to rotate. So, which means they were not able to throw spears. Okay, but they were very powerful because the thing was very thick, right?
Right.
So they can deliver a very major stab.
Okay.
With great force.
Okay.
But that was in close contact.
Okay.
Now, so there are hypotheses, there are theories that probably this habilis and the current Homo sapiens probably lived together in the present day South Asia or somewhere in those.
Is it?
And there was some kind of a conflict. These are hypotheses, we don't know, but it's nevertheless interesting.
Okay.
And they had a conflict where so they were almost similar in the build. Probably the habilis was a little bigger, but the reason this small advantage that the Homo sapiens had means that they could fight with them without getting too close. They can just throw spears, right?
Okay.
And that gave an advantage, and over time, because of this advantage, the Homo sapiens excluded the habilis.
Oh, okay.
No, these are just theories. I'm just telling you how evolution goes on, right? When two different species compete, one which has a slight advantage over time gets the advantage
the
and
upper hand.
will end up sidelining the other.
Okay.
So this is how evolution in action works. So I was just making this as an
Right,
example.
right.
Yeah.
So coming back to India,
Mhm.
though now we have you have quite eloquently said that Aryans and Dravidians are basically the same, at least don't have much genetic variation. Uh, what about language families? Does it exist?
Sure. So there are different language families.
Hmm.
We have the Dravidian family. We have the Aryan, Indo-Aryan family.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. So there are different language families.
Hmm.
But again, so there has been a lot of intermingling that has happened.
Okay.
So that is why you don't see differences in the genetic level.
Right.
Yes, linguistic, socio, cultural differences are there, but
Okay.
biologically there are no.
Okay.
Because
we are highly mixed.
because we are highly mixed over
So nobody
thousands
can
and
call
thousands.
themselves pure Dravidian or pure
No,
pure Aryan.
I don't think so. No, nobody can call themselves. I mean, there are some ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indian genes, but these are just markers.
Okay.
So markers means it's probably a small section, a small segment in a chromosome,
Okay.
which is different,
Okay.
which tells you about the migration history. But if somebody has a marker for the steppe ancestry or that doesn't mean that they are closer to the people who are currently in Ukraine
who are in that region right now.
Right.
They'll be more.
They are more likely to be
more associated with the South Asians or Indians.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. So, can you tell me something about the ancestral North Indian, ancestral South Indian gene? I mean, do you know?
I don't know much about it, but I was following some research coming from CCMB, Hyderabad, Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology. So they do these kind of population level studies, and they do find some markers which are unique. Like there are some markers for the tribal people, right? So because probably they were the first ones to migrate out of Africa and settle in India, because migration happened in batches, right?
So everybody migrated out of Africa.
Not everybody.
Is the current accepted theory, right? That all humans came
out of Africa. That's the out of Africa hypothesis, and that is where all the scientific evidence today points at.
Okay.
So humans originated in Africa, and one group moved to Europe, one moved to South Asia.
Okay.
And before that, they intermixed with the Neanderthals.
Okay.
That is why every human race except the African race.
Neanderthals are another race of.
No, Neanderthals, as I said, they existed 50,000. They were probably a subspecies.
Okay.
So they were these humans with this broad forehead and very thick eyebrows.
Right.
Those kind of people.
Right.
They lived 50,000, 60,000 years ago. I think, the last known was around 50, 60,000 years ago, they went extinct. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
But they did mix with the Homo, our current Homo sapiens, except the Africans. So the present day Africans don't have Neanderthal genes.
Right.
Every other race, be it Mongols, be it Caucasians, South Asians.
Okay.
I'm not very sure about the Aborigines. Probably they too have. I'm not very sure. But every other race has got 2.5% Neanderthal gene.
Okay.
So that is interesting. So there is some kind of a hybridization.
Right.
So humans, they originated in our present form, originated in Africa, and then as they moved out of Africa, they started intermingling with Neanderthals.
Okay.
And at different points of time. So this is happening continuously.
So nobody can claim complete indigenous that any.
No,
Indian,
nobody can. Because
any part of the world, nobody can say that they're completely indigenous.
Africa, you can, because that's
only
where
Africa. Okay.
But it all depends on. Some countries don't have this complex migration history like India. India has got waves of migration happening in different points of time. So of course we are much more interested. Whereas some other countries, if you look at Fiji or some, probably there have been 1 or 2 or 3 migration events, and that's all.
Right.
Right. So that's why people are more homogeneous there.
Right.
But the entire narrative, why this narrative, this Dravidians and Aryans and is interesting, is because we had several, migratory patterns, events, so to speak, episodes.
Okay.
People coming in at different points of time.
Okay.
Yeah.